This watch is bold, it's loud, and it's also proud to be the only super compressor, true super compressor in the market. When it comes to Christopher Ward and their talking points, there is no shortage of things to talk about. But interestingly, it's the story behind this super compressor that actually interests this designer. Find out what it is and find out what the Christopher Ward C65 super compressor has to offer to you. Christopher Ward's divers are known for their really slim cases and sleek design, and this often wears small on most wrists, but this one, on initial impression, really wears big on me. Now, that's not a knock against Christopher Ward, as they often make some really classy and well-made watches, especially this 41mm super compressor. Of course, this comes in with all of its very nifty features, including some more as we talk about it later in this video. What makes this wear big on my wrist is really more about my wrist than anything else, and that really exceptional dial and bezel. Let's throw it in on my wrist to see why. On my 6¼ inch wrist, this barely keeps within my wrist wall, and ironically, that clasp helps out with the wearability because it has that slight curve to it. I do prefer smaller clasps often, but this one looks nice on me. Also, that curved case really wears thin on your wrist, no matter what angle you look at it. So why does it look big on my wrist? Well, mostly because of those lugs and that white bezel that clearly expands the dial even more. Now, there are other features that makes it more comfortable to wear. It has the industry expected micro adjust mechanism that's very easy to use and very convenient whenever you're on the go. Of course, I'm having trouble here because I'm not looking at the clasp itself, but rather on the camera. But believe me, it's very easy to use. For this watch, we have two crowns here, and the first one is the usual hour and minutes hand. There's no date complication here to worry about, so that's one less thing for you to think about. This is as expected of dive watches, a threaded crown. And because of that, I found it really odd that I couldn't turn the upper crown. And it turns out this upper crown is not threaded and you could just easily wind it in one direction. And yes, you heard it right, that's a unidirectional inner rotating bezel, which I find really surprising and is a neat feature coming from Christopher Ward. So don't be an ignorant watch pirate and force turn this crown counterclockwise like I almost did in the unboxing video. That will actually break the watch. From the back, there's a couple of square tabs that releases the end links, making it easy for you to swap bands. Christopher Ward also included a notch on the end link so it guides itself into place whenever you want to put it back in its lug holes. And of course, you cannot ignore that medallion and that orange ring on the display caseback. Now, mind you, that orange ring is not the super compressor spring, but rather what's inside it. So that ring is there to let you know that there is something special inside. Now, before we dive into those features, let us examine this with other bands on the market. Now on this NATO strap with these orange stripes, it really works well with the orange highlights and accents of this style. Now, Christopher Ward also offers a lot of their environment-friendly NATO straps, and you can choose from one of them as many of their compressors and divers are designed to be worn with the strap. And Christopher Ward carefully curated their straps to match the colorways and the designs of their cases. Now, I understand that NATO straps are not everybody's thing, especially Dane, sitting driver, or Mr. Zelos, but this NATO really entices me to keep wearing it as ruggedly as possible. Of course, until I send this Christopher Ward back in for them to, stock into there. Now, this can also work with certain other straps, such as this Zelos leather strap. Brown age leather straps are a thing of beauty, and this is no exception. Now, I just love this Horology leather strap from Zelos. It's been a staple of my collection ever since, and the more it wears out, the more personality it puts in. Now, this Horology leather strap is not suitable for most watches, but this one gives it a little bit more of a vintage, old school feel, making it a lot more casual and personal, if I may say so. Now, I personally have very little 22 millimeter straps left, but I assure you there's still a lot of options in the internet if you have just 5 minutes to look for them, or maybe 50 or 5 hours. It's up to you. But normally it's 20 millimeters that's more popular, so 22 millimeters may be a little bit more limited, but not so much. Speaking of strap options, you know what's coming. And if you want some premium straps, look no further than Artem's sailcloth straps. This loopless kind really tucks all of the other excessive straps under your wrist, so makes it a really clean look for your strap and your watch. Now, this color may match other stuff such as this very nice Kunuku Coffee Roasters cup, but it's not guaranteed to match all of your watches, especially this Christopher Ward. I would have loved to have some turquoise sailcloth straps, but currently that's something that Arten doesn't offer as of yet. But of course, like what we mentioned earlier, Christopher Ward offers a lot of these straps with varying colors that match their own color schemes. So you can browse their collections to see which one works best for you. It's very clear that this Super Compressor dive style watch is not just a really capable watch, slim and beautiful, but it's also very versatile. Let's now go upstream and compare this Super Compressor to other popular Super Compressor watches in the market, namely this Legend Diver from Longines. This very famous diver from this legendary brand has a very slim profile, as you can see in this comparison of thickness, and also has this familiar dial that is hard to beat. This Swatch Group brand also didn't skip on the caseback, as it's also decorated much like that of Christopher Ward. However, this is a $2,500 watch with a slightly less interesting case finish. This is where Christopher Ward excels, as its light catcher case has a more complicated and more brilliant watch design. But where Longines excels is with the heritage of the brand and also that very identifiable dial that everybody knows and love. Now, if you're gonna go all out on your super compressor style watches, then look no further than JLC. This perpetual calendar Polaris is as excessive as you may think, and it's also equally expensive as you might have already expected. It is every watch pirate captain's dream to sell out his whole treasure chest and buy one of these perpetual calendars from this very much revered atelier in Switzerland. It's got the adored craftsmanship, it's got this engineering marble within its cases, and you'll likely be inducted in the Watch Pirate Hall of Fame just by owning one of these. However, fun fact, even though this is one engineering marble, it's not an actual super compressor watch. Believe it or not, as well crafted and complicated this watch may be, it's not an actual super compressor that we all would have been expecting from JLC. It's very much evident that you're likely owning one of these complicated divers because you already have a few JLCs in your collection, and the last thing in your mind is that genuine super compressorness that's not inside this case. Which also begs the question, who's really asking for a genuine super compressor watch? But enough about me for now, and here's what you have to say about this super compressor elite from CW. Cosmodoc says he prefers the original teal dial super compressor design wise. Considering that he has bought many CW watches before, it is not a microbrand anymore. And yes, I agree, they are not a microbrand anymore, and I should stop saying that. CSBD1 says I was too hasty in trying to turn that crown. He almost expected me to take some pliers to open it up. After rewatching the video, I also felt the same. However, I cannot unsubscribe to myself, unlike CSBD1. And finally, Mr. Shinobi, the sworn enemy of pirates, has some words of wisdom for everyone to take note. With a bezel that wide and that wide, not filling with loom was a missed opportunity in my opinion. It's a dive watch after all. Nevertheless, it seems like a well-designed, well-made piece of Sea Ward. I dig it. I also dug it, but more on the research side than just the visuals. I had to look up this decompression scale, and here's how it works. You actually need to set the minute hand at the 12 o'clock position and choose your planned dive parameters. The left side displays the depth in meters, while on the right is the equivalent depth in feet. These were indicated in the chapter ring. As time passes along, or the longer you dive, the dial will indicate how much time you'll need for a decompression stop. So, for a dive of 35 meters that took 10 minutes, you'll need to take a decompression stop of 5 minutes. It's in keeping with the focus of compression and decompression. That's a sort of engineering harmony that you can't find in many watches. But if you had to study your watch dial, though, it's a given that it's not the most intuitive watch to work with. By that virtue, 93 out of 100 watch pirates will likely think this is a Coast Guard sobriety test first and a decompression timer second. The remaining 6 blokes are likely the one-eyed colorblind types that's just super impressed about that super compressor case. That brings us to the most interesting story about this super compressor watch. According to the brand, this watch was created out of the request by one CW fan. Yes, Christopher Ward created this watch because someone had the beard to ask CW to make a genuine super compressor case. So, CW studied how to make a real super compressor case that's now a seemingly lost technology and brought it back to life in this C65 Elite. It's a noble attempt at which they succeeded, although with a little hint of irony. It only managed to be rated at 150 meters. I now echo what my wife always says. I expected more. But Christopher Ward did a lot more for this watch outside its technology and design. They showed that they can listen and produce a watch based on the request at a rather short amount of time. I seriously doubt that Longines or any other big companies can accommodate such an ambitious request. And that gives CW an added value to an already very competitive market. That's the C65 Super Compressor from Christopher Ward, and this is not just the C65 Super Compressor Elite. And it's elite because it really has that Super Compressor ring inside it. It has that bezel and that really funky dial with its decompression scale. At this recording, I still don't understand how this decompression scale works, so I'm gonna have to look that up, see if I could put that in the video, and we've probably seen it. But the most interesting part of this watch is not just the fact that I expect all of the bells and whistles from the usual Christopher Ward offerings, but this has that really interesting story. They made this watch because of a request of one client. Now, that client must have bought a lot of Christopher Ward for them to actually consider that. But at the same time, they said in their interviews that they really wanted to take that challenge. And I don't see many micro brands doing that, making this such an effort for one customer or one loyal supporter. How much more with the levels of a Christopher Ward. I'm not saying that Christopher Ward is one of those luxury big brands, but they're getting up there. They're more than a micro brand now, and that's very interesting, to consider a request, a strange and unusual request from one of your supporters. And as someone who's trying to launch his brand and trying to put my hands on designing and manufacture, it's tough to accommodate all of these requests. But once you get that one, it becomes a little bit more intimate between you, the watch, and your clients and your customers. That's amazing. I like that from Christopher Ward. So what do you think? Is that something that also entices you to go and hop into the Christopher Ward bandwagon, or it's just simply a great story to relate? Comment down below. Let me know what you guys think about this new, well, not so new because it's been a few months released already, but it's new at least in this channel. New C65 Super Compressor Elite.